So is it, after sort of a turbulent offseason, is it a relief to actually get in here and have 16, 50 players, stocking rosters, and all the business that any sports league goes through?
Absolutely, because besides all the things that you read about, in the media and on the blogs, we have been having a busy regular offseason with blockbuster trades and player signings, and this is the chance for us to really, put that out in front and launch the season. And we're really looking forward to 2011, and particularly with the World Cup and the World Cup year. As many as perhaps 40 of our players could be involved in the early rounds, and so has a huge impact on our teams, and it's also a huge opportunity for those players and for WPS to get that kind of visibility through that. So we're very excited.
Can a World Cup when not held in the United States provide that content big enough for
I think so, and especially now in the age of digital media, and I know in other countries actually. In Germany, Rob was over there this in the fall, and it's great coverage of the World Cup there in Europe, and I think on the internet there's going to be a lot of follow-up, and that's why a lot of what we're doing for the World Cup is going to be social media driven, and particularly with our partners, what we found with some of our newer sponsors is they're really interested in social media. That's one of the ways that I think we really resonate with our audience, because it allows for that intimacy between the fan and the player. You get to know more about the player, what they're like as a person, what's in their gym bag, you know what I mean, things like that. And our sponsors actually really want to get involved in that and help us with that in terms of promoting and creating visibility there.
Can you speak of some of these specifics with engaging the social media world with the World Cup? Will that be independent of WPS, or?
No, it'll be WPS driven, but it'll also be in conjunction with sponsors. And I know, for instance, Playtech Sport, they're really interested in getting kind of an insight into what it's like from a player perspective, and they want to work with us and with a player to maybe have a player blog that about preparing for the Cup or anticipating the Cup. And a lot of those details are, some things on Facebook, and a lot of those details are to be worked out. But they're actually helping drive some of those initiatives and some of that content.
Sorry, ask this somebody not about the World Cup, but about the Washington Freedom and their organizational changes and the name changes. From a league perspective, promoting a team that is admittedly a bit of a mouthful to pronounce, is it hard for you guys? Or, talk about the process you're going through with that.
Well, when the new majority investor in Washington came on board and actually made the investment in the team, one of the conditions was that he'd be allowed to change the team name, at some point. And the decision and the specifics of how and when is obviously something that, that is being worked. But, I think, I think the reality is that it's going to be in this sort of state of two territories for a very short time. I think he's going to make up his mind of whether he wants to move the team permanently to Florida, and then it'll have a home in Florida, and it'll really effectively be a new team. So that's really how we look at it. And one of the things that we're seeing with him, but also certainly with Western New York Flash, is that you've got our model is a franchise model. It's not a single entity, and we're starting to see now individual teams with different business models coming in that actually take advantage of different synergies. So for Western New York, you've got Salins, and they're interested in sponsorship, and that's a different business model for them. They can kind of have that synergy on a marketing level with their brand, and that enables them to do a lot of things that if you just started a team without that, you might not be able to do. So I think that this is a sort of a time of experimentation for some of these teams, and that's the advantage of our model from that standpoint.
Is there any concern now with the season, just 4 months away, that the Freedoms still don't have a concrete place to play, either in Maryland or in Florida?
Well, I think, we've all read the concerns on the blogs. I think, sports team owners are a colorful bunch, and they come in with their own view of how to run a team, and there's a learning curve. And ultimately, they shape the team in the way that they shape it, and that's really up to them to figure that out.
Talk about, from your own personal perspective as commissioner, do you think how much you would work with MLS, cross-promoting things, doing double headers in markets where that's possible, things like that?
Yeah, that's actually, thanks for asking that question. That's one of our top initiatives for this year, is really to find more ways to work with them. I think the double headers can be a real success. That's really the primary focus for us, but we're going to continue to talk and find ways to cross-promote, as you said.
Going back to sponsorships, you guys have had 2 sponsorship announcements in the last couple of days here. Are those at the level of like City and Puma? Are you still working to build some more national sponsors?
Well, we're always looking to build more national sponsors, but they are at a substantial level, and we're obviously very happy to have brought them on in this off season. They're 2 great brands for us, and it starts to move us in a different direction with some consumer product branding, and the official hot dog of WPS is great. But yes, we're always interested in talking to more sponsors. We have more opportunities, but we feel like, at this point, we're really, actually, truthfully, ahead of our targets on that, which is great. It's a nice place to be.
Can you talk about the expansion discussions that you've been having for the future?
Yeah, we've had interest from several different markets. We've had ongoing discussions with 4 to 6 markets who are really interested in coming in next year, and that's very encouraging. And we're actually going to fly. Our expansion committee members are going to fly out west and spend time on the West Coast meeting with teams out there. Obviously, for this year, our teams are all on the East Coast, but we are a national league, and we want to have a footprint there. And I think that to make the West Coast work, you really need a bit of a critical mass. Just one team out there is tough. It puts a strain on everybody from a travel perspective. And so we really want to build some critical mass on the West Coast. And over the next several years, we could see ourselves moving to a divisional play.
Do you have an estimate on how many investors are interested, and more specifically, how many different markets are represented by those investors?
It's 4 to 6 markets, and a couple of the markets have more than one investor group. I mean, you know how these things go. It's a long process. It's a 2-way vetting process, both us to them, them to us. And but we're at a point now where we're working closely with 4 to 6 different groups.
You do expect to add teams in 2012?
Absolutely, and that's a top priority for us.
And are the bulk of these investors new investors? Have they been in the pipeline for a long time, or are they relatively new in terms of postseason stuff?
It's both. It's both. And one of the things actually that's been really great about Western New York joining is we're seeing a W League team kind of step up into WPS. And we see that there are a lot of advantages to that. You've got a front office, you've got a staff, you've run a sports team before. And we think that could be a real model for success. So we really want to work closely with the W League teams as well, and WPSL who are interested in coming to WPS.
Are any of the potential investors in Canada to go in who are at Berkeley? There's a possibility of the Whitecaps maybe looking at this, and would that potentially lead to joint operation between an MLS and WPS team?
Yes, I mean, we have been talking with interested parties in Toronto and Vancouver, and I could absolutely. There are 3 or 4 different MLS markets that over the years we've talked to, and they have an interest in joining. I think that they've been wanting to wait and see, and now's the time. I think that we should re-engage in those discussions as well.
How do you think it would work when one league is franchise-based and one league is single-entity-based?
Yeah, we'd have to work that out. I mean, it's a different, it's clearly not only a different structure, there's a bit of a different mindset perhaps. So that's something that we would have to work through. Obviously, we haven't had that issue yet.
You mentioned the advantages of having a WAT come up with a front office with the staff already in place. One other issue that's come up in Washington / South Florida is that the staff is gone, and everyone who has experience running a soccer team is gone. The general manager was a player until a few months ago. Does that pose any concerns for you at this point?
Well, that's one of those things that falls in the camp of an owner's got to build his own organization, and I would expect that they'll bring in staff, and they're bringing in staff obviously, and they've only been at this for about a month, so it's early days still, but I would expect that they're going to build a staff and execute.
A lot of your teams have players who reside with host families and or have some other way of finding housing on a temporary basis. When you have teams playing in 2 venues, is that going to be a little trickier? What do you tell the host family in Washington? Hey, you're going to have this person for part of the summer.
I have no idea how they're going to handle that. They're going to have to make it work.
So it's on them.
Absolutely, it's on them.
in other markets, or host families fairly successful for you?
You know, they have been. I think a lot of teams have used that model. You know, obviously it depends on, you know, I'm sure it depends on the fit, but I've heard good things. So yes, I think it's a viable model.
Philadelphia moving venues within its market this year too wide. And it being a World Cup, there's a sort of uptick of interest from men's soccer fans and women's soccer this year. What's your view on converting fans of the men's game into fans of the women's game?
Well, I mean, the beauty of the World Cup is not only does it convert, you know, more men's soccer fans, it actually converts people into fans who haven't really watched soccer before. We've seen that with every World Cup, and you know, and that's something that you know that we hope to see happen. I think when people see the quality of play in the league and the level of play, and then again, obviously that helps drive them. They're gonna want to come out and watch, and it's a different experience. It's such a family-focused experience at our games. I mean, it's you know one of the best things. This is my first year with the league, and one of the most exciting aspects of my job this past year was going out and watching those games and seeing the kids line up after the games, you know, waiting for the autographs. The players are so so friendly and engaged and accessible, and it's a great experience. No one I've ever brought to a game has said, "Oh yeah, I didn't care for it," or "I wouldn't want to come back." They've all come back, and I think that it speaks for itself.
Can you speak a little bit more to you mentioned the W League, and then I mean, you obviously have Melanie in the office now, and then you have WPSL teams saying that they're just playing a year in WPSL to gear up for moving up, and then you have, at the same time, those two leagues don't exactly get along. I mean, do you need more synergy between the 3+ leagues that are kind of working towards the same goal, essentially?
Did Melanie ask you to ask that question? That's one of the reasons, actually, I mean, that she's such a great person for us. Yes, I think, of course. And it's a small enough world that that we do need to find ways to work together. She's been a great driver for that, and I think she'll continue to really help.
What, I mean, is there anything specific that you're looking at as far as trying to link teams, you know, from league to league that are feeder teams or some type of pyramid or anything?
Well, I think that clearly the W League, you know, players are, you know, that our coaches are watching them. I think that you know we didn't have a combine this year. That's something that we always consider, and there will be opportunities to do that and to drive those for us.
Given what happened with the Chicago Red Stars, going forward, are you guys looking at loosening the escrow requirements, or are you going to remain strong on that going forward?
Yeah, actually, that's a great question, because I've read some of the coverage about that, and I think that there's a perception that the escrow requirement was the hurdle that they had to clear, and that but for that, they would have made it. And obviously, I'm not going to go into details of any particular thing, but suffice it to say, the escrow requirement was not the hurdle, and what it was an opportunity for teams to really get their planning done for next year early. To look at budgets and to make a decision of what they could do. And if it had been really close, I think we would have seen a different outcome.
What can we expect in terms of TV for 2011 and beyond?
Well, so we're working with Fox Soccer. Obviously, our partnership with them continues through 12. I think the open issue that we need to, that we're going to be focused on the next couple months, and we need to focus on is regional TV and local games. Our teams are required to, combination of webcast and broadcast for matches, and so we're going to look at that. Western New York actually is a good addition, because when they were the Buffalo Flash, they televised all their local games. So we're going to see if we can find ways to get more of those games, more of the local games televised in that region.
There's been a lot of intrigue surrounding Marta's destination in the past couple of months. How important is it that she stays in WPS in 2011 and beyond?
Well, we would love to have her come back and play in 2011, stay in WPS. I think she wants to play in WPS, quite frankly. She wants to play in the States. It's obviously something we'd love to have, but like anything else, you need two people to agree on terms in order for that to happen. And I know she's, I know there have been conversations, but as yet, there has not been a deal done.